the Lunch and Learn with the Family and Community Health Sciences Department. And we are recording today. So I want you to be aware of that. So that it is on record. And if you do not wish to be seen on the recording, then certainly want to have your camera off. And I have set it so everybody's camera is off. So if you all of a sudden see that your camera's not on, it's probably because Jackie or I have taken you off camera. Jackie Fuscalero is the consultant with us in Cape May County, and another one, just like Fong, who is here some Thursdays. And she is joining us today as the host. She will be checking the chat if you have any questions or anything you want to know as we go along, and then we'll try to get to those at the end. I'm Christine Zellers, and I'm the Family Community Health Sciences Educator, Assistant Professor in Cape May County for Rutgers Cooperative Extension. And before we get really into the presentation, I just wanted to quickly review the Cooperative Extension structure for those of you who may not be familiar with it. Rutgers Cooperative Extension is a partnership between the Board of County Commissioners, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture. We have faculty now in 21 of the 21 New Jersey counties. So every county has someone from one of our departments right within the county. And we're charged with teaching science-based, evidence-based information to the communities. We're composed of 3 departments, which include agriculture and natural resources, 4-H youth development, and then family and community health sciences, which is the department that Jackie and I are with. FCHS provides outreach to in New Jersey and beyond on topics related to nutrition, chronic disease prevention, food safety, and overall wellness. We hope that you'll visit our websites for nutrition and wellness related resources and follow us on social media. And at the end of the presentation, I'll provide my contact information as well as the websites and the social media handles for you to do that if you so choose. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Okay, Jackie, can you see that?
Yes.
All right, great. I guess you can hear me this time.
Yes.
Our previous concerns. So as I mentioned, I do a lunch and learn. It's always on the 4th Thursday of the month, with the exception of November and December and June. So other than that, we're here. You're welcome to join us. It's a half-hour quick little nutrition bit that you can hopefully use in everyday life and is practical for you. Today's title is Sodium, Feeling a Little Salty. And we're going to have 3 objectives during this conversation. So first off, we're going to talk about sodium and its effects on our bodies. And you'll hear me use salt and sodium interchangeably. They mean the same thing. And then we're going to talk about understanding sodium on the nutrition facts label. And then we're going to talk about tips to reduce salt consumption with healthy, tasty cooking. All right, so you can see here, I have a kind of a busy slide. I'm going to go through it quickly for you, but these are the key points that I want you to remember. You might have joined me for a previous presentation like dietary fats that we did last month or one of my other presentations. And a lot of times the information I'm presenting, I try to help you keep in mind that there's a lot of information out there about their detriments and the detriments of eating certain things like fat. Fat for a while was eliminated from diets, and it's an essential nutrient. So I want you to keep in mind that when we talk about a specific thing like fats or salt or sugar is next month's presentation, that everything should be done in moderation. So you don't want to completely necessarily remove everything from your diet, as we'll discuss in the different areas that we break it down in. But I put these 3 topic areas back to back to back so we could talk about that. And as we're talking about it, I really want you to think about the moderation aspect of it. Sodium, much like fat, isn't bad. Sodium is an essential micronutrient, which does, it means our body needs it, and it does do something for our body. It's an essential electrolyte, which means it helps to maintain the balance of water in and around our cells. It helps us to maintain proper function of muscles and proper nerve function. And it can also assist with maintaining a nice stable blood pressure level. There can be such thing as too little sodium in your body, and that can cause problems for you as well. Too little sodium in the body is called hyponatremia, and hyponatremia symptoms may go unnoticed. So you might not even know that you have that, and they might not even be a problem, or they might cause people to pass out, have a seizure, or even go into a coma. So that's the good news on sodium. But for most people, that's not a problem. Most people in America don't have too little sodium in their diet. The bad news is we really have too much sodium in our diets. The dietary guidelines recommends 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. However, the average American consumes 3,400 per day. So if you think about that, that's an average. And, I can't say how much everybody's consuming, and we'll talk about maybe trying to find ways to do that for your personal consumption, so you have an idea. But if it's an average that 3,400 is being consumed, then we can figure that many people are getting much higher than 3,400 milligrams per day. So have you ever noticed that when you do eat a lot of salty products that you might feel thirsty? This could be due to the high amount of sodium you consume, because eating too much sodium could have a short-term effect of leaving you extremely thirsty. In general, people tend to be dehydrated naturally. We don't consume enough water. But if you're eating salt, that can dehydrate you as well and make you feel very thirsty. It could also spike your blood pressure, and you might notice that you feel bloated, or that your rings on your fingers are tight, maybe tighter than usual if you've eaten a lot of salty food. Water retention is another short-term effect of too much salt. And while the short-term effects aren't really pleasant, they're not, maybe make you a little uncomfortable, they're not as serious as those long-term effects of eating too much salt. So you can see that on the slide. Eating too much salt for a long period of time can have really a lot more serious effects on the body. Too much sodium in the diet could lead to hypertension or high blood pressure. Hypertension forces the blood through the body at a high force, and that weakens the arteries. And over time, this could lead you to having a heart attack or a stroke. So it can be very serious. I've read several studies from the National Library of Medicine to pull this presentation together. And they all indicated that there are links between high sodium consumption and stomach cancer as well. So that's another reason why you might want to be mindful of that sodium intake. So you can see on the slide also that I have 2,300 milligrams, which I want to remind you is the recommendation. So that's about 1 teaspoon per day is the equivalent. So I used to do a fun activity when we were in person with some of the groups I worked with, where I would take a fake meal made out of rubber food and cover it with a piece of plastic and ask people to put the salt on, how they would usually distribute salt on, say, a piece of steak and mashed potatoes and some vegetables. And they would put that on there, and then I'd very gently pour it into a teaspoon measurement. And people were amazed that in that one meal, they were adding themselves almost a teaspoon. And that didn't count all the things that they were kind of putting in their bodies that they didn't realize were there. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to determine that on labels and whatnot in this next slide here. So before we discuss the nutrition and sodium, let's talk about where you think you get most of your salt intake from. So you can see from the slide here that 70% of the sodium in Americans' diets come from packaged goods. But I'm going to ask you just to, wake everybody up and make sure you're all there. So I know I'm not just talking to a blank screen. Type in the chat, where do you think in packaged goods? So what specific packaged goods do you think contain the most salt? And I'll read some of them off. Let me change my screen here. I'll read. Oops, sorry. I'll read some of them off as I see them pop up in the chat there. Or Jackie. Actually, I'm not seeing the chat. Oh, here we go. Canned soup, somebody said. Prepared food. What specific prepared food? Soft pretzels. I love soft pretzels, and I have a gluten allergy, and that's like one of my things. If I can never eat gluten again, I want a soft pretzel. Chips. What else? Anything else you think in packaged foods? You're going to be a little bit surprised, I think. Anybody else have ideas on what packaged foods might have a lot of sodium in them? You can put it right in the chat. Frozen dinners, that's a good suggestion. Dried meats like beef jerky, that's a good addition. Yep. Ice cream, cheese, all good thoughts. You guys are on the right track. Cake mixes, I don't know about that one. I'd have to look at the ingredients label and check on it, but that we're going to talk about that on checking on those ingredients labels. Bouillon, yep. Jarred or canned sauces. A lot of times it's hidden and we don't even realize it. And I think you guys are really on the right track because you're saying, you know, like the cake mixes, like I said, I don't know specifically on cake mixes. Everybody has homework now. You got to check out cake mixes. I'm teasing. But check out the labels and look at what you're looking at. According to the CDC, the largest amount of sodium in our diets actually comes from grains and meats. And somebody had hit the nail on the head with the beef jerky. Yep, that can be a culprit because it's a dried meat. Other top contributors include processed poultry, soups, and sandwiches. So I know my mom and dad, for instance, I don't know if they're on the call or not today, but they do buy like the prepackaged chicken that's already sliced up. And that can have a lot of content of sodium in that. So as we move along, we'll talk more about sandwiches, but you all were right on track. As is the case with many packaged foods, the ingredients and things that can be detrimental to us can quickly add up. So pick a day out of the week, just say, okay, we talked about sodium yesterday. So today is Friday and I'm going to look at my sodium consumption. And I want you to look at the label for everything you eat during the day, just for one day, and then jot it down somewhere and total it up at the end of the day, because I think you're going to be really surprised at how much salt you're consuming and where you're eating it. Because we're not always aware of that. I know I did a 24-hour food recall one time, and I had a sandwich and I had lunch meat on it, and I had a little bit of chips with that, and that really added up really quickly. And I was really surprised myself at how much I was consuming. So a piece of bread, for instance, could contain as much as 2,300 milligrams. And if you have a sandwich with 2 pieces of bread, now you've eaten 460 milligrams, and that's just the bread. So soups, salad dressings, canned tomato products, and snack foods may all be piling up your intake without you even realizing it. So check out even prepackaged, pre-made salads, for instance, could have a lot of them. I know my husband found one time and had 840 milligrams. So right there in a small salad, you're adding quickly to that contribution of your daily intake that should be 2,300 milligrams. When you check the nutrient facts label on any product, 3,500 milligrams, you can see it circled there and sodium on the side. 3,500 milligrams or below is a lower sodium product. However, if you have 140 milligrams or higher, it fits into the high sodium category. So you can see this product, whatever it is 160. It would be considered 160 milligrams would be considered in the high levels of sodium. Some fats have some foods remove the fat in them and they add sugar or salt. So be on the lookout for products that might seem healthy, but they're adding salt and sugar in them to kind of make the taste better because they took the fat out. So again, just be mindful of those. Eating out can also really contribute to high amounts of sodium because they might be adding salt to the meal. So be mindful of dishes that may be high in sodium and try to make another choice for that, especially if you're in the high risk area for heart disease. So I'm not advocating you don't eat out because obviously our restaurants, especially now, really need our support. But if you do eat out, ask to see the menu and we'll go over a few things with that and how to, when you're eating out, how to dine rather mindfully with your sodium levels. So here are some of those foods that often have higher salt content. And you might be, some of them you'd be like, oh yeah, I can understand why. But some of them, like you said in the chat, could be ones that you might not consider. I was taken off by a little bit of them. I was kind of put off by a little of them. So shrimp often contains salt for the flavor, and they may have a sodium-based preservative in it, preservative in them. Soups often have a lot of sodium for flavor as well. And somebody mentioned canned soup, so they could be soups could have that. Ham has salt added for the curing. Instant pudding. Who would have thought instant pudding, like the cake mix, right? It's sweet, but it can contain as much as 350 milligrams in 1/2 cup serving. So be mindful of that. Cottage cheese was another one that took me surprised. It's low in calories, it's high in protein, not a favorite of mine, but it can contain a good amount of sodium in that as well. So be on the lookout there. Veggie juices could provide several servings of vegetables in them, but they might also have a lot of sodium in them, as much as 405 milligrams. So be careful of those. Salad dressings can have a lot of sodium in them. I have a wonderful garlic vinaigrette that I like to use because it's low in sugar and calories. But then when I checked the label, it had 220 milligrams of sodium in 1 tablespoon. Blue cheese is another one, 290 milligrams. Blue cheese dressing, so be careful of that one. So if you're adding it to your salad, you're trying to eat healthy, you could be like really taking up that count. And again, if you're at risk for heart disease, or you already have heart disease symptoms or have been diagnosed by your doctor, then you want to be mindful of what you're putting into your body. Frozen pizza averages about 756 milligrams per serving, and restaurant pizza 957. Or that, that 957 is 41% of the recommended daily allowance. So you want to be really aware of how much you're eating and space it out. If you're going to have that pizza, I'm not telling you don't eat pizza, but be mindful of the other things you're eating during the day so that you're not, really hiking up your salt content. As I mentioned before, bread can provide a lot of sodium in the diet. And once you add the meats and the condiments to that and the cheese, you can take a six-inch hoagie could total, 1,127 milligrams of sodium. So remember, the daily allowance is 2,300 milligrams, and that's almost half the allowance if you're eating that hoagie. Then you go and you add an ounce of chips, which isn't very much, and you have another 95 milligrams. So check to see what's really in there and be mindful of it as you're eating. Again, I'm not telling you to deprive yourself of these things. I'm just letting you know that it's there and you need to be aware of it, especially if you're being mindful of it. Broth and bouillon was mentioned. So broth and stock options, try to use the low sodium version of those so it doesn't add up, because they could have a lot of sodium in them as well. Processed cheese, which somebody mentioned, is high in sodium. And then canned vegetables can be an inexpensive alternative to the fresh counterpart. However, they can have a lot of sodium too. So to get around that higher sodium amount in canned vegetables, buy the low sodium option, just like you could for soups, or rinse them off, the vegetables, rinse the vegetables that are canned off to reduce the sodium amounts in those. Same with canned beans. Also, dried meats are one that was mentioned, and they can be high in sodium too. So this is really a short list to kind of give you ideas and point out the ones that are pretty obvious and ones that are not so obvious. But be mindful of that and check out that nutrition facts label so you know before you eat how much you're getting in there. And again, do a little experiment one day and try to figure out how much is in things. This is the question I get all the time. So I wanted to put this slide in here. That people often ask me, well, what's the difference between table salt and sea salt? Because, there was a big push for a while on sea salt. So the short answer to this is nutritionally, there is no difference. The size of sea salt may lead you to eat less because it's a little bit bigger, but for some people, it might be the opposite where they use more. So you have to be careful of the amount you're adding. But the difference comes down in the processing. And you can see here we have the two sides. It basically comes down to where it's mined and how it's processed. Sea salt, shown here on the left in the picture, comes from the sea and it's evaporated. Oftentimes trace minerals are left behind, and that's what gives it its different colors. These minerals may taste different as well, but there's not a change in the amount of sodium. So overall, it's the same amount of sodium in there. Underground mined salt, which is usually processed more, and that's like the white table salt that we eat, that could contain a non-clumping additive. But the bottom line, one's mined on land, one's in the water. The bottom line is 2,300 milligrams of sea salt or 2,300 milligrams of table salt is still 2,300 milligrams. It's just really in the processing that they've come down to that makes the big difference there. So again, think about how much you apply of either to be spot on with that and try to keep within that 2,300 milligrams. All right, so right now I'm going to ask Jackie to open up the poll, please. And I am going to put in the chat, let's see, here it is. Hold on 1 second, let me get to everyone. All right. I'm going to put in here a link, and you can also hold your phone up to that link. And if you open your camera on most of the newer phones, it'll take you right to the website. That is an evaluation, and I'd really appreciate it if you take a minute. It literally takes less than 5 minutes to do this evaluation. It's really helpful for me to know what your thoughts are, what you want to hear about, what I'm covering and what needs to be covered, because it'll help me to formulate future presentations for all of you, maybe develop a few new things. I've been a part of the Wellness Wednesdays, as many of you are on this, hosted by my department every Wednesday. And for the seafood information that we got out of the chat and out of the evaluations was just magnificent the last 2 days or the last 2 weeks. And we're going to use that to formulate other material. So, based upon your questions and things like that. So please do take a minute to fill that out. It is very helpful for me. And also the polling information gives me some type of idea of what levels you're at, what you're consuming, and what your knowledge is, so I know how to formulate future information. So I thank you in advance for filling those out. So moving right along here, let's talk about when you do read the food ingredients label. So we're looking at that high-low, the high 140 on the nutrition facts label, the low 35 on the nutrition facts label for sodium. But when you read the ingredient food label, you might notice that it's not always listed as salt, usually not, or sodium, but the content is high when you look at that nutrition facts label. So this is just a few other names I wanted you to be aware of. Obviously, if the product contains salt or sodium or soda, there's some type of salt in the product, but sodium does have other names. And you'll notice that on the ingredients label by some of these other names that are listed out here. In short, anything that contains the word salt, sodium, or soda is sodium. Some may have di or tri in front of them, as you can see here. Do I have any of them? Like sodium bicarbonate. Some of them might say disodium, like the top one. But these are all forms of sodium. And this is the list. This list is provided by This list is provided by the American Heart Association. And gives you an idea of what to look for in the ingredients label. Some of them are chemically formulated, some of them are naturally occurring, but they're all types of sodium that you can be on the lookout for in the ingredients label. All right, so like I said, I like to try to finish up by the time 12:45 rolls around so that you can all get back to your day. And I just wanted to give you ways to keep the sodium level down. So let's discuss that. We want to make sure we don't exceed 2,300 or try to keep it as low as close as we can to 2,300 in a day. And when you try to cut down on sodium intake, ask restaurants to not add salt. Or you can ask, some of the chain restaurants have a nutrition facts label. You can ask them to see that. So you can choose an option that's lower in sodium. You could ask your server if there's something that's lower in sodium, or you can ask them to not add the salt and do it yourself at the table. Now, make sure when you do that, that you're not, adding more than what they might do, like try to do a little bit at a time and taste it. Request the low sodium option, as I said. If you get fries, for instance, ask them to hold the salt on the fries and then add it yourself. And make sure that you're not dumping it again on there, huge amounts. Also, when you eat out, maybe only take half of the meal and eat it at that time and then save the next for the next day. So if it is a higher sodium meal, you're not eating the whole thing and consuming a whole bunch of sodium at the same time. You can spread it out over a couple of days to keep your daily allowance down. When you cook at home, add herbs, spices, or garlic for taste instead of salt. You can add fresh or dried spices and they create great flavor. Make sure to make sure to look at the content of spices, that you're using. So for instance, a fresh spice like cilantro or parsley or basil adds a lot of flavor. But if it's packaged, some of those prepackaged spices might have a lot of sodium in there. So take a look at those and make sure that you're not having something that has, you're thinking you're doing something good, but you're really adding a lot more sodium than what you think you're adding. So take a look at those packaged spice products or herb products. Try to avoid foods. If you eat packaged foods, look at the nutrition facts label. So try to avoid the packaged foods if you can. Try to eat whole foods if you can, like apples and oranges that are not packaged. But if you are eating a packaged food, remember that 140 milligrams is considered high, 35 is considered low. And again, try to avoid packaged foods where you can. Use lemon juice for flavor. So spray a little lemon juice on chicken, other poultry or fish to add a fresh taste and lessen the need for salt. So you're getting that flavor, but you're not getting it as salty. And don't add salt when you're cooking. Try to taste it first and then add the salt. So it's to taste. It's not, just dumping a bunch of it in. Even if the recipe calls for, say, a teaspoon of salt, which is your daily allowance, but you're not going to probably eat the whole container of whatever you're making, but add a little bit in and maybe not the whole teaspoon, and taste it and see if that's good for you, because you might be surprised. Also, a trick is to put salt in the palm of your hand before adding it to food so that you can see what you're doing, how much you're adding, and do it a little bit at a time. And take small steps to decrease salt a little bit at a time. You don't have to do all these things I recommend at once. You don't have to, all of a sudden jump in and do all these things, but be aware of what's out there and do little things all at once so that you're able to cut it out as much as possible.
Chris,
these are my references. Thanks, Jackie. I got it. These are my references for creating this slideshow that I used. And this is my contact information. And I welcome you to email me if you have any questions that weren't covered here today. I also hope that you'll look at our website. It has all the upcoming presentations we're doing. I'm doing another one this evening that we do a garden program. Jen Sawyer and I, who's the agriculture program assistant at the Cape May County office, are going to be doing an Eat What You Grow. So if you're thinking about starting a garden this spring, then please feel free to hop in with us. There's no cost for that, obviously, and we're glad to have you and share the information. Today, we're covering kale, cabbage, and peas, and I'll do the nutrition portion, and then Jen will be covering the information about the gardening. That's her area of expertise. So, and we also have all of the great things posted on the Facebook pages that are up to date and share a lot of information with you. So I'm going to check out the chat and see if there's any questions there I can answer. If you need to hop off at this point, I understand, no problem. If you'd like to stay on and hear some answers to the questions, please feel free. Do sea salt have any iodine like table salt does? I know the answer to that question and I can't think of it off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I don't think it does, but don't hold me to that, because I've looked into that information before. And what I'll do is I'll include that information when I email. I'm writing it down right now. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it doesn't. I'll look into it. And when I send out backup information all the time. And I will send that out to all of you. And when I do, then I'll certainly get that to you and let you know. And let's see, any other questions? Sorry about that. Okay, and it looks like the rest were questions regarding, if anybody has one and wants to throw it in the chat, please feel free. I appreciate you all joining me, and we're just about to the 12:45 mark. So if you have a question, you can throw it in the chat. And if you don't have any questions and you think of one later, then feel free to send that along to me. And I'll gladly answer it. I get questions all the time at the end. All right, looks like we do. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate, I know that we get a lot of folks from the Cape May County Wellness team joining, and I really do appreciate y'all hopping on all the time. And I just want to give you a shout out because we were recognized on my statewide meeting today as being the leaders in the state. Yay for Go Cape May County for being on the Wellness Wednesday calls. So kudos to all of you for hopping on all the time. That's great. Always good for our little county to be recognized down here. Get our due.
Chris, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Is that okay?
That's wonderful. Yes, please do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. If there's no other questions, I'm going to end the meeting at this time. And I appreciate you all for being here. I thank Jackie for taking time out of her lunch hour as well to co-host with me and do all the nitty-gritty behind the scenes. and have a wonderful day. I know it's not a real sunny one, but it's still a good day to get out and get a little exercise. So maybe you can jam that in at the end of your lunch hour here. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.